I'm sure somebody will be like, no, it's this dumbass.
Duh, you guys are nerdy like me. It's 1984, and you can never reproduce this movie. you can only mimic it, right?
I'm such a 5-year-old. Jamie, you introduced me to a film called Electric Dreams, which I'd never heard of before.
Well, I've heard of it, but I never saw it before.
So how did you hear of this film?
I don't know. Sometimes I go through my playlist and I actually heard kind of the theme song on one of my playlists. And and was like, oh, that's kind of, but then I looked it up and it was like, that's based on, it's a soundtrack for a movie called Electric Dream. But then it had Virginia Madsen, who I think is one of the most underrated kind of movie dream girls of the 80s, right? You have a lot of dream girls, dream girlfriends in the movies in the 80s, but I think she's one of the most underrated ones. So I was like, okay, we got to watch this. Plus, it's kind of like we haven't really done a rom-com on this Outlook show before.
It's nice to get that variety in there. But you're absolutely right. So this is an oddly overlooked film because I'd never heard of it. You apparently had kind of heard of it, but not really. It's got Lenny von Dohlen in it, who people probably know from Twin Peaks more than anything. As you said, Virginia Madsen is in it. Maxwell Caulfield, I don't know, he's kind of somewhat known, but then Miriam Margolyes is in it from Harry Potter and like a billion other things. Like she's got 200 credits to her name on IMDb.
Yeah.
So this has a pretty big cast of characters that later went on to be pretty major stars.
Yeah. And it's directed by Steve Barron, who actually did, and you'll get this, who did a whole bunch of music videos for like MTV.
80s music videos. I could see that.
So that's why I think Steve Barron was trying to, and even Steve Barron says, trying to pull like that 80s music video vibe into like a full length feature movie. It's a very 80s thing. And you can tell this movie is like a kind of like a big 80s music video, like a feature length MTV kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. So I guess we got to assume that a lot of people haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So basically what it is Lenny von Dohlen, I think I'm pronouncing that last name correctly, plays a guy named Miles Harding. Harding. I'm such a 5-year-old. All right. So Miles is this guy who is constantly late and a bit disorganized. And a friend of his at work tells him, you know what you need? One of these, a Palm Pilot is basically what it was like the 85 version of a Palm Pilot, whatever the fuck it was called, right? He goes down to his probably a Radio Shack, but not a Radio Shack, and is like, I want one of these. And the ladies there are like, wow, we don't have those, but we have one of these, and shows him a computer. And he's like, sweet, a computer. So he takes it home, plugs it in, and starts doing his thing, and then somehow manages to figure out to connect it to his network computer at his office. He is an architect and he's working on a type of brick that can be used in buildings to make them earthquake proof. And so the computer connects and basically makes itself into a sentient AI supercomputer. Oh, that's also smart connected to his house. So it does run everything in the house.
Yeah. It runs everything. He connects it all. And, the music's playing while he's going through the montage of connecting it to his house. It controls his fridge. It controls his locks on his door. And in that sense, it's actually kind of ahead of its time because like that was probably really futuristic back then. But now it's like, computers kind of do that now. They kind of control your lights and
they definitely
your locks and your heat and your fridge. There's a computer in your fridge. Mm-hmm. So in that way, it was kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah, your fridge can tell you when you're out of something and you reorder it for you if you want. So it definitely predicted the future, just didn't happen in 1985. There's a short story by a sci-fi author that I'm trying to think of that's the story too. It's this family, they did a Simpsons spoof of it even, and they get a smart house and the house eventually turns evil against them.
Yeah,
What was that
in the
called?
Halloween one.
Yeah, The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Simpsons spoofed it, but I can't actually remember the name of it. It's a famous author too, a famous sci-fi author. Um, anyway, so in this case, yeah, so he also then develops a crush on his neighbor, played by Virginia Madison. Plays
Madsen.
Madsen. Whoops, Madsen plays a girl named Madeline, who is a cellist with the symphony, but he's kind of like the kind of nerdy guy, but not too nerdy because he does ask her out and stuff. But what happens is she's up practicing upstairs when he's out of the house, and his smart computer starts playing music along with her. And she's like all enamored, thinking he's the one doing it. And so basically what happens is Miles and the computer named Edgar, that we learned at the very end. Oh, sorry, spoiler. The computer's name is Edgar.
Spoiler, his name is Edgar. Not that that's a big deal. Like, don't you want to know my name?
Don't you
yeah,
wanna
what
know
is
my-
it? Actually, yeah, you're the first AI on the planet. What's going on, Edgar?
Edgar. Oh, that's
like,
not very exciting.
Okay, Edgar.
Thanks for the letdown. So basically, Edgar develops a crush on Virginia Madsen as well. And then the two of them kind of basically fight over her, is more or less the plot.
Yeah, it's kind of this love triangle between he and the computer and this beautiful new neighbor who moved in. I thought this was an interesting movie from the get-go, though, because he's at the airport. This movie first starts. He's at the airport and he's seeing kids playing with like electronic cars, and everybody's got electronics. And even he thinks the gal learning English is talking to him, but then she's like, "Huh, what are you talking about? I'm learning English." And it's interesting because this movie was made in 1984, but all of those reactions that this Miles character was given, like with all this electronic stuff around him, is very much how I feel today. People are talking to themselves. People are just all into their electronics, and nobody's like really paying attention to the world around them anymore. So I thought that was interesting that's the movie started out that way, with this Miles character almost kind of out of his element with all this electronics around him. And this is 1984, right? In that way, I think it was kind of, again, I think this movie, as kind of goofy and silly as it is, was pretty forward thinking.
Yeah, I mean, the computer's very 80s, very dated, with the look of the computer, the music, the style of the film.
It's a very 80s movie.
Totally 80s. But you're absolutely right. It's got everything right. Like, computer AI is very close to what this is doing in the computer. People live in their own little handheld world of their phones. Yeah, it's absolutely. People have online relationships and never meet face to face, in the way that the computer and Virginia's character interact with one another in a lot of ways. And even how Miles is, I like how I keep calling him by his character name and her by her real life name.
It's okay. Forget it. We do what we want.
Yeah. And Miles is basically using the artificial intelligence of the computer to make him more appealing to her, in the way, like, we could go on to various sites, type some text in it, and it will literally like write a letter for us and be like, okay, now I tweaked this, and then send it off, this love letter to somebody that you can do and not even write yourself.
Well, and it really is kind of a Cyrano de Bergerac kind of film, where he and I kind of like when they were at the fair and they're having a good time at the fair, and they're doing the whole 80s love thing with the music in the background,
the montage.
Yeah, and
gotta have a montage.
You gotta
it's
have
not
a
an
montage.
80s film.
80s montage. But then she's like, well, I really appreciate, oh, you're writing a song for me. I think that's so great. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Because really the computer itself is doing it. And then it pans down to these little Pinocchio toys, which I thought was kind of like interesting, because it says two things. One, you're lying, it's not you. And two, this is kind of a Cyrano de Bergerac story, where the big nose ugly computer is writing your stuff and like wooing this girl for you, even though he loves her too. So it really is kind of a Cyrano de Bergerac thing. And if you look at the movie, you can, like, in some of the scenes, you can see that symbolism there, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it takes from a lot of things before it, but puts it in pretty well in regards of how it does it. Because you're right, there's that Cyrano aspect to it. There's the sci-fi from the book or from the short story that I can't remember the name of, that I'm sure somebody will be like, "Duh, it's this dumbass."
You guys are nerdy like me.
Yeah. And I'll remember an hour from now, kind of a thing.
I know.
And,
or we can do some funky editing where you're like, and that author, and then it cuts. You say the name, and then it cuts back in.
Completely
like,
different. Like,
totally knew that different room.
Yeah, totally. And the author,
Ray Bradbury.
Okay.
But then I think it draws from like 2001: A Space Odyssey, because the computer starts to get jealous and pissed at Miles, because he's like, the computer's like, hey, wait a minute, she really likes me, and she doesn't like you, she likes me, she likes what I'm doing. So they even have that red, he becomes this red eye.
No, totally. That was
right. You see where that came from, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he starts messing with his electronic life. Like, he starts canceling his credit cards, and he puts them on the police's like arrest warrant list or whatever. He starts messing with his life. And he starts embarrassing him because he didn't have any money, and the cops are after him, all this craziness, right? I get another foreshadowing to like, digital identity theft and things like that are prevalent today, right? Hacking. And I think you got it right there too.
And you hit on it when we started too. And it's a music video. Those scenes with the music are so 1980s, and they do some pretty good CGI stuff in this too, with the computer in the way that it moves to the music, and like all of the interweb bits and that kind of stuff. So it has that kind of 80s electronic music video thing going on too.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very 80s, like this kind of style of movie. I don't know if it would ever like fly again, or if it ever would be made again. It's just very 80s. Like it's like one of those things you can never reproduce. Like it's 1984, and you can never reproduce this movie. you can only mimic it, right? That's how 1984 electro beat kind of music video, MTV, kind of that introduction to technology and its dangers, but not really
synthesized electronic effect going on. But yeah, it was funny though, because the fact that this was made in 1984 and implies that it takes place in 1984. And in 1984, computers definitely could not do all of this.
No, they couldn't. No way.
It's like, yeah, okay. Just not going to buy that.
But they can now. That's the fun thing about it, is like a lot of this, I guess this movie could have been made today, and it would have been like it would be adequate. Like people are kind of tired of like, we can't talk to each other and everything controls my house. But like today, that's becoming more and more so.
It's true.
And I think
go ahead.
The one piece that's probably like that we haven't had yet, but I think might come, is when Edgar and Miles, they get into it. Miles comes, "You're ruining my life," tries to wreck the computer, but the computer's kind of fighting back because he controls the house, and he's like making the doorknobs hot and shit, like craziness, right? And then he even puts a little game, like a little Pac-Man, where it's like the little Pac-Man Miles on the screen is running around as he's actually running around in the house. Like, yeah, you're Pac-Man, check it out.
I'm gonna get you,
sadistic computer.
It's true. Yeah. It was a little much, but it's funny because we were talking about that because we don't have an Echo or a Apple whatever, a Google whatever, and kind of stuff like that. And and my wife said something about that, and she's like, "I don't suppose you'd want to get one of those, would you?" And I'm like, "No, we're not getting one. I don't want a computer to run my house." or to listen in on anything. I don't want Amazon listening into our conversations. Yeah,
some kind of machine provided to me by a corporation that may or may not have my best interest in mind is literally capable of listening to everything I say in my own home.
Yeah.
Do I really want that? I don't. I'm having trouble with, like, I finally got this smartphone like couple years ago, right? Like, I don't like it.
Is your setup? Does your say like, "Hey Siri"? Will your phone turn on? Hey Siri, is your phone turning on?
Hey Siri, it doesn't do that.
No.
My son's phone does that though.
Oh, okay.
He knows how to do that. He's like, hey Siri, he says, hey Siri. It's not Cortana. That's what he does on his computer. But I like it because look, I grew up with Star Trek Next Generation. It's like I want to talk to the computer, but I don't want to talk to the corporate provided computer, right? In Star Trek, it's like provided by the United Federation of Planets. Like they don't want to sell you anything. They don't even have money.
So money doesn't mean anything to them.
They truly just want to like make a better interface so you can do cool stuff in the universe, right? But these, I don't really trust corporations that much. I don't think they're intentionally nefarious, but I don't think they have my best interest in mind either. So
yeah, I agree with you on that. I don't think they're intentionally being evil in the sense of like, how can we be evil? But certainly like, hey, we're putting this product into your home. We want to make sure we're getting something out of it. Mm-hmm. So how can we potentially, make a little money off of you? If we overhear you having a conversation about some product, maybe you might hear an ad for that product next time you listen to a podcast or a song.
Maybe, not my thing. It's interesting in this movie, the hardware company's name is Pinecone.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's kind of a play on Apple computers, but they call it Pinecone computers. Yeah, that's cool, right? But as you can probably imagine, I don't know if we're giving away endings or not, but
no, let's not give away the ending.
Okay.
That way I don't have to put spoilers up on the thing. And I think people should go watch this film.
I think so too. So are you giving it a thumbs up?
I'm giving it a thumbs up. I'm giving it. It's an unfairly overlooked film, and people should watch it.
I agree. And we're not even like rom-com fans, as you know from our rom-com episode. But this is a rom-com for sure. This is it's cheesy love story kind of stuff. But I think it's 80s enough. And it's like got that music, like 1984 music video thing going on. And it's got a lot of interesting kind of forecasts about technology that aren't far off. You look at, decades into the future, a lot of what they were presenting is like kind of spot on. So I have to say, it's worth it just to look at kind of like what they thought might happen back then. And it did. So this is a good piece, and it's got some cool tunes. I like 80s electro music, So
yeah, I don't, but I appreciate it in this film because it works for the film. But would I go buy the soundtrack? Absolutely not.
I totally would.
No.
In fact, I might. You know me. I'm like, that's good shit.
Like, where can I get this CD or where can I get this cassette tape? It was 1985. Gotta get the cassette.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's an overlooked movie. And I think people should watch this. We saw it on YouTube. I don't know if that's cool or not. But there are other ways to get it too.
Yeah. I don't know if it's legally on YouTube or not. I would imagine. I mean, it hasn't been taken down. So if you can see it on YouTube, watch it. If not, find a place to watch it. I don't know where else you'd watch it from.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Go to your local video store and see if they have it.
Yeah. Go rent it. Go to your Blockbuster, rent it.
Go to your
Blockbuster. Probably have it in the rom-com section.
Yeah.